Okay, so good morning from Italy, and thanks for coming to this session. And this is a presentation which derives from a paper that I have recently presented in Athens, and the paper is available online. So here I will try to summarize the main points, and then I will try to leave a significant amount of minutes for the discussion. This is the summary, definitions of conflations and duplications, their causes, their detection, their solutions, and the issues in this process and things that can be improved in this process. So, starting from the definitions, which are quite clear, I think, a conflation happens when in one item there are some parts, some labels, statements, site links, things that are in fact related to another item. And so these two entities have to be split in separate items. A duplication happens when the same entity is treated in different items, and these items have to be merged. So these are the issues about which we are talking. The causes and some statistics. So if two entities have the same names or similar names, of course they risk to be conflated. The typical case is homonyms. I usually work on items about persons, and if there are many homonyms, it's easy to mix them. Of course, this happens not only in Wikidata, but also in the databases like the authority files, which Wikidata uses as sources. So some of these mistakes can come to Wikidata from other databases. And if an entity has many names, it risks to be duplicated in many items. So also these are quite obvious, I think. In Wikidata, who adds conflations and duplications? Of course, manual edits, as always. Of course, the batches throw quick statements and open refine, which are the usual way to make big imports into Wikidata, or imports made through both accounts. A relevant difference between these two types of imports are that quick statements and open refine don't require an approval before running, although they can be undone afterwards. Whilst in the case of both imports, each bot task has to be approved before running. And usually in the approval process, there are many users asking to be particularly careful about conflations and applications, especially the applications. So if an import is done through a bot, when the bot is approved, you can be reasonably certain that there has been a certain amount of attention to this issue, whilst imports made through quick statements and open refine are done without a previous discussion. And so statistics are difficult. At least they are difficult with the existing tools. The existing tools basically don't allow to make any statistic about conflations, also because conflations are managed in a way that is entirely manual. There is no kind of automation in solving conflations, and so it is also difficult to trace the conflations. It is somehow easy to trace in the applications, and especially the merges, because merges are done through a specific gadget and they leave redirects. So you can both trace merges and trace redirects. There is some difference in the statistics about merges and the statistics about redirects, but anyway, you can see them here, and you can see that there have been, in fact, a lot of merges during these 11 years of Wikidata, and there are still some merges, about 30,000 a month, which is anyway some it is some work which is done by some thousands of users. And this is an interesting statistic that I have extracted from the data of Wikiscan. So in the last years, most of the items which have been created and then merged have been created not by bots, but by accounts that are not bots. So this is, I think, an interesting piece of evidence of the fact that, especially in recent years, it is highly probable that most of the applications have been added not by bot imports, but by imports made through quick statements and OpenRefine. Of course, you can also find more details in the paper about all the things that I am exposing here briefly. So, how to detect conflations and duplications? Of course, the most usable way are constraint violations, and the two types of constraint violations that we can use in these circumstances are the unique value constraint violations and the single value constraint violations. But if a thing that I want to insist upon is that both of these types of constraint violations can point to different types of issues, both in Wikidata and in the external database to which the IDs belong. And this is made clear by, I think, this table. So here you can see that basically the two types of violations about which we spoke can be the symptom of three different types of issues. So in fact, if you see a certain violation, it's not always the same type of issue that you have to correct, but you need to analyze case by case and see in which of these three cases the violation needs to be classified. And there is a further degree of complexity, which is that you can only solve directly the issues which arise in Wikidata. So you can solve this column, but you cannot solve directly this column unless you have editing access to the external database. So, for example, if you are a librarian who is interested in connecting his or her authority file to Wikidata, you can also solve the issues in your catalog. But if you are, for example, a Wikidata user which is interested in connected Wikidata to authority files, you cannot solve directly the issues in the authority files, but only the issues in Wikidata. Now I have numbered all these cases, all these 6 cases, and I will briefly pass through them. These images of cases are all on commons, and I've made them available in CC0, so they are on commons. And the first case is probably the most frequent one and the easiest to be solved. So you have the same ID, the same external ID in two items. The two items are the same. You merge them, and it's easy. And I think it doesn't need any further explanation. Second case, the same ID in two items, but in this case, the first item, which has the ID, in fact, should not have the ID. And so here, the solution is simply removing this ID from the first item. This seems easy, but it should be noted that if item A has this ID epsilon, which doesn't belong to it, probably it also has other data in itself, which belongs to B and should not be here. So in fact, it's not only a matter of removing the ID epsilon, which would be easy, it's also a matter of finding other pieces of B which are wrongly in A and to remove also them. Because usually if an item is conflated, the conflation is not only in one piece of data, but it is more extended. So the difficult part is finding other pieces of A which belong to B and removing also them from A. Then we go to case 3. In case 3, the ID which is present both in A and in B is present in both of them because in fact it regards both of them. So the ID is in itself conflated. And so it's in a certain way it is correct that it stays in both items, but it's not correct from the perspective of the external database. So the external database should have one distinct ID for each of the items. And so the solution in this case is the provisorial solution is leaving the ID in both items, but deprecating it so that it disappears from the query of the constraint violations. Of course, the best solution would be obtaining from the external database that this ID is either deleted and substituted by two distinct IDs, or otherwise it could be that this ID is edited so that it becomes related only to, let's say, item A, and a new ID is created for item B. So anyway, the best solution would be that the database solves the conflation, creating two separate IDs. The provisorial solution, if you cannot obtain the best one, is just leaving the conflated ID deprecated. Then, here we have seen the first three cases, which are the cases obtained from the constraint violation, same ID in two items. And these are the first three cases. Then we go to the other three cases, which are obtained from the case two IDs of the same database in the same item. Also, these cases are potentially useful to find mistakes either in Wikidata or in the external database. So, the first case is the same database has two IDs in the same item. The solution, of course, if the IDs are duplicates, would be that the external database merges them into one. So ideally, here only the ID X or the ID epsilon remain. the motivation because of which I have maintained the two IDs in the right part of the picture is that usually you have no way to obtain from the database the merge of the two IDs, and so usually in Wikidata they are just left there, just waiting that the database merges them. In theory, you could, for example, deprecate one of them on the basis that you can deprecate the one which contains fewer information, or you can also deprecate both of them because they are duplicates. But since both of these theoretical solutions imply somehow your judgment about these two IDs, and in fact, these two IDs are both valid. They are both related to this entity. The usual solution, and I think also probably the best one if you cannot intervene in the database, is just leaving both of them here, which of course has many drawbacks, but I think it's the best solution available. Then the next case is, of course, the conflation in the item. So if the ID epsilon is in fact not related to the item, you can remove it. But as I have said before, usually if the ID epsilon is here because of a conflation, there will also be other pieces of data which are not belonging to A and which have to be removed. So you should also find these other data which are conflated and remove them. So it's not so easy as it seems. And then this case, the last one, if this ID is conflated, of course, the usual solution, the best solution would be reporting it to the database and have it solved in the database. But if you cannot have it solved in the database, you can just deprecate it as a provisorial solution. And so these are the three cases with the two external IDs in the same item and the solutions to these cases. Which are the conclusions about this part of detection? The conclusion is that in the case of same ID in two items, you can solve most of the violations, and so these kind of violations are very useful. The problem is that the other type of violations, the violations two IDs in the same item, are flooded of these cases. These cases flood the violations of two IDs in the same item, and basically they make them unusable because you continue stumbling on these cases and you cannot solve them, you cannot eliminate them in an effective way from the list of constraint violations, and so they remain here. And you have, in fact, you have an entire type of constraint violations which become useless. Of course, the solution to this is having a relationship with the external database. If the external database solves these cases on their side, then you can also solve them on Wikidata's side, and then also these violations become an effective way to monitor this. But if it doesn't happen, you can only in fact use the first type of violations, because for them you have mostly an entire control and you can solve all of them in Wikidata, most of them at least. And only for case 3, you just deprecate waiting for the external database to solve. But anyway, deprecation is an effective way to make this disappear from the list of constraint violations. So let's go on. Solution. Here, I think there is not much to be said. So merges and splits. The merges are very quick through the merge gadget. So you use the merge gadget, and in a few seconds, the merge is made, and it can also be traced because the merge gadget leaves a tag on the edit, and so you can also easily trace all the edits which consisted in a merge using the tag left by the merge gadget. The splits are the opposite. The splits are performed manually, and they are a long series of edits which regard all the parts of the conflated item. So there could be conflated data, non-pertinent data in all these parts of the item, and you have to go through all of them and check if they are conflated or not. And this is long. This can also be discouraging because it's in fact a long and complex task. It's much more complex than merging duplicates. Issues. Let's come to the last part. Which are the issues? Which things could be improved in all this process, at least from my point of view? So in the paper and also here, I would like to point to three things that can be improved. The first thing is mitigate the causes. We have seen that, especially in recent years, probably quick statements and OpenRefine are responsible of most of the duplicates and conflations added to Wikidata. There is no strict guideline about the criteria to undo batches containing many mistakes, and I have seen in many cases users complaining to other users because they had imported a lot of duplicates through quick statements, and the user who had imported the duplicates said, oh, I will resolve them, and then in fact he didn't do it, they didn't do it, or they did it only to a certain extent, but they didn't do it entirely. And so, and there weren't, in fact, ways to, for example, enforce the undoing of the entire batch, and having some standard for the quality of these batches could be, I think, a good way to mitigate this issue. Of course, it won't make it disappear entirely, but I think it could be a good mitigation strategy. And this, of course, should be done by the community, by Wikidata users, who have to reach an agreement about a possible standard of quality for these batches. Second proposal, in order to improve the detection of these issues, as I said, we have an entire type of constraint violations, 2 IDs in the same item, which is mostly unusable because of the duplicate IDs in the external database. We should have more effective way to report these issues to the external databases, because some external databases don't have at all a way to report issues. We should convince them to have an effective way to report issues, and of course also to take these reports into account in a reasonable time. And there is a proposal that I made at the Data Quality Days 2022, which originated in a Fabricator ticket, which is as of now stalled, and I hope it could be moved forward. Of course, having a tool to make it easier to report mistakes is not enough. We also need the institutions that manage external databases to take these reports into account. So I think it's, on one side, it is a technical issue because having a tool simplifying the management of these reports would encourage institutions to take these reports into account. And it is also a problem of, I think, lobbying or, convincing, persuading these institutions to understand that taking these reports into account is good for Wikidata, but it's good mainly for their data. So if they want to improve their data, they should take these reports into account. Finally, the third proposal I have is creating a gadget for splits. I think there is also, but maybe I didn't find it again. I think there is a Fabricator ticket. No, there is not a Fabricator ticket for splits. There is a Fabricator ticket for undoing merges, undoing wrong merges, which is in fact a particular case of conflation. So if you make a wrong merge, you conflate an item. And then if you want to split it, this is, I think, a specific case of split. So in general, as I said, making a split is a very difficult task, and this can discourage some users from making splits, or they could make the split, but in an imperfect way. So they can forget to remove non-pertinent data from some part of the item. For example, they can leave some incoming links to the item, which in fact refer to the other item. So it's easy to forget some part of the split. Having a gadget which guides the user in the split step by step in all the parts of the split, which are, to be clear, the parts of the split are, are defined above, just to show them again. Excuse me for this. Here, all the parts of the split, which are these ones. So the user should check the labels. So you have, for example, the gadget which starts a process and makes the labels more, labels description analysis, they get colored somehow. So you check them, and you have a button that you can press, and if you press the button, you at the same time delete the label from this item and add the label to the other item, for example, because as of now you just have to cut it from the item and paste it in the other item, which is 2 edits. But if you can do with a button in just 1 edit, it would be quicker, it would be better. And then the same for statements, the same for identifiers, for site links, and for the incoming links. The incoming links, I think, are a crucial part which is often ignored. But if you leave some incoming links to the item which don't belong to it, this could be highly damaging. So they should also be taken into account. So having a gadget which simplifies all of these steps would be good, both to have more splits and to have splits of higher quality. And I think this is also very important. And with this, I think I have ended my presentation. Thanks for your attention. And the slides are on Wikidata. The paper is linked from Wikidata. And I think we can go to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Camillo. That was such a good and insightful talk. There is a couple of messages in the chat. Friedrich says, the move claim gadget is a very useful for splitting an item.
I know.
Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
So I very much agree. The move claim, and also there is also a move cycling, of course. There are both a gadget to move the claims, which can be used both for statements and for identifiers, and the gadget which is used for cyclings. This, as I say in my paper, I haven't added it to my slides, but in my paper I say it, move claim and also the move cyclings would be two things which would need to be integrated into the gadget for splits. Because, for example, we don't have a similar gadget to move labels, descriptions, and aliases, and we don't have a similar gadget to move the incoming links. So we should integrate these two gadgets into a wider gadget appositely designed for moving for splits. And these are some parts of this future gadget which are already ready. They are already ready. And you just need to construct a gadget which has also other functions and which is specifically designed for the splits.
Thank you so much. And there's another question here from Meldrick. In case 3, what's wrong with using an qualifier identifier shared with?
It could be. It will also be used. So yeah, you can deprecate. It's I think it's the most complete thing you can do. First, you deprecate. You deprecate with motivation conflation, and you can also add motivation conflation is a qualifier. So reason for deprecated rank, which is the property, and conflation, which is the value. And you can also add a second qualifier, which is identifier shared with the other item. This is the most complete way to mark a conflated ID. Of course, as I said, this is a provisorial solution, because the best solution for us and for the external database would be just not having the conflation. Since the conflation is there, the provisorial solution is deprecating, and of course, you can also add to the deprecation identifier shared with. I think this is the best way to mark a conflated ID in Wikidata until it gets solved in the external database, which is the final goal for us and for the external database.
Thank you. And there's another comment here from Tamsin. Part of detecting preventing duplicates surely encompasses item quality. Sometimes I cannot tell if the item I want to create is the same or different than an existing one, because the existing one with the right label has no references and very few statements.
Yeah, I think this is also so this is a frequent issue when you make a big import. In many cases, or also when you are using mix and match, so you are doing somehow a manual reconciliation between a database and Wikidata. Sometimes you are not sure if the existing item is what you are looking for, or it isn't, and you should create a new item. The only thing that I can suggest is first spending time on clarifying what the item is. So first, go on all the existing items which could be what you are looking for. Try to understand what they are, improve them so that it becomes clearer what they are, and then you will be able to decide probably if you have to match to the existing item or create a new item. If the item doesn't give enough clues about what it is, you can also propose it for deletion, because one of the criteria, so probably if there is a connected Wikipedia article, it will make clear what it is, I think. If there is no connected Wikipedia article, if there are no incoming links, so it doesn't respect the criterion 3, only the criterion 2 remains. And the criterion 2 says that the item should be a clearly identifiable entity supported by references. If the entity is not clearly identifiable, it should be deleted. And so the problem will disappear. If it is somehow identifiable, you can make it, spending some time, more clearly identifiable, and so in a way or another the issue is solved. Of course, if people would create only items which are very clearly identifiable, they would make other people waste less time. So of course, make good items so that other people don't have to spend time in making them clear. But anyway, yeah, this is my suggestion. So spending time to make it clear what the item is, which would also be good for other people, because other people could stumble on this item in the future. So if you make it clearer, this will be good for you and also for other people. And if you are totally unable to understand what it is, propose it for deletion.
Thank you for that. Oh, here we go. We got another one that just came up from Friedrich. Sometimes conflation exists in the ontology itself. The most frequent cases of conflation at the class level are subclasses of both an organization and a building or a facility. These cases can be very difficult to resolve because some users actually want the conflation to exist and to remain. One particular case is the community center, and there is a link in there linking to that.
Yeah. So this is of, in fact, I have not said it at the start of the presentation, but I usually work on persons because working on items about persons, apart from a few things, is very clear cut. I know very well the problem of organizations and buildings, for libraries, for a lot of things, which is, I think, one of the deepest problems of data modeling. So this is data modeling stricto sensu. This is more complex. Ideally, you should, of course, have two items, two separated items for organizations and buildings, but it could be very, very complex and very time-consuming. And so, honestly, I often just go away and do other things. to be honest, because I often think that in the same time in which I could solve a conflation of a building and a library, I could probably solve five issues of the same type for persons. So for the optimization of my time, I tend just to go away from this. But of course, it deserves to be solved, and I can give the word to
Friedrich, I think wants to speak to this now. Go ahead, Friedrich.
Hi, thanks for the talk. It's been really great so far. The problem is that these cases of conflations between organizations and persons, they create problems when reusing the data in other databases. And I'm one of the advocates of actually populating data in Wikidata for the purpose of reusing it. You know, it should not just be there and sitting there. Honestly, I wish there was a stronger stance in the Wikidata community to deal with those particular cases when there are users who have an ideology that it is a good thing to conflate concepts together. this goes against the principle of Wikidata. It's great in Wikipedias, no problem there. Wikipedias do their thing, but Wikidata is something else. In this particular case of the community center, I mean, it's turned into edit warring. Um, the external links they point to authority files that, for the majority of cases, describe a building. So this item is clearly primarily about a building. The other remaining external links, they point to other concepts that are not even clearly an organization. So there's no case to claim that this thing describes an organization yet. There's edit warring and a particular user who complains about other users' narrow mind view that these two things should be uh, uh, narrow worldviews, sorry, that these two concepts should exist in two different items. Um, what do we do in these particular cases?
So I think this falls, unfortunately, mainly in the talk that I gave to the Data Quality Days 2022 about data modeling. So if you find an issue, first you have to find it, then you have to discuss and reach an agreement about how to solve it. And I think a lot of discussions get stuck there in finding an agreement. So unfortunately, I think the only solution would be just continuing the discussion and reaching a point in which there is consensus for some kind of splitting the two concepts, so the building and the organization. The only way is reaching an agreement, unfortunately, because reaching an agreement is the precondition to then enact the solution on the items, which tends to be the most difficult part. Reaching an agreement, at least in theory, is not the main difficulty, but unfortunately, it becomes blocking sometimes. And there are many cases of discussions I have myself started and which got stuck, and waiting that they get unstuck, I simply go elsewhere because there is a lot of things to do in Wikidata, and I simply go elsewhere, unfortunately. And my next talk to this morning will be about the next step. So how to solve the issue once you have agreed on the data model which is to be pursued. But unfortunately, there is no specific technical suggestion about how to reach this agreement. Unfortunately, there is just continuing the discussion, try to find the mediation, and
Nicola did point a potential solution in the chat. Thank you, Nicola. Before moving on to another question, I'd like to state that one particular problem arising out of class level conflation is that it makes it more difficult for those of us who are looking for conflation at the name entity level to actually detect the conflation. When I run a query to find conflated items, I end up with a bunch of false positives that are actually class level conflation. So that's one more reason for resolving these cases of conflation.
Yeah, and my paper was mainly concerned about conflations, not at class level, but at instance level. So the specific center A, the specific center B, the specific center C. But of course, the worst of all are conflations of concepts. So if the concept of library, community center, etc., are conflated, these also make nearly impossible to split on the instance level. So of course, you have to proceed in this case bottom down. So first, of course, reach an agreement on the item about the concept, and then try to find with a lot of toil, trying to find solutions for the instance level. And of course, the most time it passes, the more cases accumulate on the instance levels. And so if you let time pass, also solving on the instance level will become more and more difficult.
Thank you so much. There's a couple of comments in the chat. Nicola said, isn't the 3-item solution a good solution here, like for Bonnie and Clyde? And also Nikki mentioned that I think what Lydia was saying yesterday is relevant. Trying to model things perfectly by never conflating things can make the data harder to use. We have to find the right balance between granularity.
I agree, and I agree also with Nicola. So in many cases, having one item for the conflated concept and choose specific for one aspect and the other aspect of the concept, I think is often, it could be a good solution, because I think there is also the issue that in many cases the sources on which Wikidata relies are not so granular as Wikidata, and so you could be in doubt about, oh, but this control vocabulary thinks about library as a building, as an organization, as both, and so also what I usually suggest is that if at least one source thinks that two concepts are the same or are divided, having at one item, if there is at least one source supporting it, is the best thing. And since I think there are surely sources which support library as both library only as an organization and library only as a building, I think it's reasonable to have, in the case of libraries, of archives, of community centers, and so on, the 3 items. I think it's the best solution.
Yeah, I mean, Jan in the chat also said, as a reuser through Gov directory, that he has no choice but to split a lot of those conflations, just like the ones that you were mentioning and Frederick was mentioning it before. I think we've just reached time. If you want to continue the discussion, you can go into the Etherpad. You know where the usernames are. Thank you so much for your chat, Camilla. It was very, very insightful, and the discussion from everyone. We will meet you back here in 10 minutes for the lightning talks. Have a great break. I'll see you all in 10 minutes. Bye-bye.